Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Eche,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not our problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And,
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
A beautiful morning to you. Welcome to Early Exchange on Sook News. I am Blessing A.G. This is a new week, the first full week in the month of November 2023. I do hope you've had enough rest over the weekend and are well positioned for growth this week. Today we will be revisiting one of a previous episode that talks about the role of research and development in economic growth with special focus on Nigeria. Now, research and development, R&D as it is mostly called, is an essential part of any economy, particularly for developing countries like Nigeria. You may be wondering, how does this benefit me as a business person? Well, let me tell you. When companies develop new products based on research, they are more likely to sell to foreign markets. This means there will be more foreign exchange for Nigeria and the economy will grow more. I'll leave it there and allow you to watch the show. I'll see you afterwards.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Hello and welcome to Early Exchange, where we talk about everything that has to do with business, finance, and the economy. I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, when it comes to Early Exchange, our obligation is to shape policy and advance development with that discussion with our resourceful persons that will be on the show today. And today is not going to be different from what you're used to. Today we'll be looking at the role of research and development when it comes to economic growth. And as you know, we are ready to give you the best. So as you spend the next 3 hours with us, I want you to prepare for the best of programming.
Wise men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is in no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The three wise men, Arometa, Suk, Enlightenment.
Because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for staying with us on Early Exchange. Today, our focus will be on the role of research for economic development. So, how important is research, and what are the areas in which current research is focusing in Nigeria? How will they enhance economic growth? These are the issues for discuss today, as we'll be talking with Kenneth Bitrus David, who is the founder Pharmafluence Education Advancement Network, PN. So we'll be looking at the pharmaceutical industry, oh yes, where people fall ill and then they go to the hospital, doctors prescribe drugs for them. And so what is this sector doing? What are the research ongoing in this sector to ensure that the drugs that are needed to combat illnesses that some Nigerians have to deal with or come down with are provided? But before we get to that, let me ask Femi. Femi, when was the last time you had to visit a drugstore and then you asked for a particular prescription and then told you it wasn't available, and then you asked why? What was the response?
I am trying to, wrap my hand around it, but I remember the last time I visited should be some months ago.
Okay.
And interestingly, what I ordered, I got it.
Okay.
I didn't have a session of what I ordered versus what I
get. Okay.
You can imagine that. But really, I think as far as Nigeria is concerned, when it comes to research, the pharmaceutical industry, we've come a long way. Unlike in the past, where finished drugs are being produced abroad and are being shipped in here. In recent times, over the last decades, when it comes to local production of drugs, I think Nigeria has improved, even though there's room for improvement. I'm aware there are certain factories in Ogun State, in Lagos State now, who, even though some of them are multinationals or they are connected to multinationals, but they engage in local production of some drugs. So this has given us the opportunity to be able to get some of these drugs easily, unlike in the past where they are being imported, and then the cost of even getting them. Even if you look at the cost of production these days, it's not that easy, because for you as a factory to be able to stay in business, you have to spend a lot on, cost of operations to power your operations. You know what fuel is talking about now.
Yes.
And some of them you have to power some of this equipment with diesel and all that. So it's not a joke, but by and large, Nigeria has been doing fairly when it comes to production of local drugs.
Now, you hit around the reason I asked, because the reason I asked, I was at a pharmacy about a week ago just to get something simple. I got what I wanted, but while I was waiting for my change, someone came to ask for a particular drug, and when they mentioned the amount, I was like, are you joking with him? And then the lady said, I'm not joking. It's because the cost of these drugs have increased because of the exchange rate.
Yeah.
And then she went on to mention some other drugs. A lot of them were antibiotics. And when she was telling me the amount, I was so shocked and I began to wonder. So when people who are in dire need of these drugs need them and can't afford them, what then happens? So it brings us to the issue of the availability of some drugs or the local production of some of these key drugs. But these questions will be asking Kenneth Bitrus David, the founder, Pharmafluence Education Advanced Network, who is joining us virtually this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How are you doing?
I am fine, and Femi is fine as well. Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange. All right, we're talking about the role of research for economic growth. Looking at the pharmaceutical sector, what's the level of research ongoing in that sector in Nigeria?
All right, thank you. All right. So thank you very much for that wonderful question. I actually enjoyed the experience you shared regarding your recent experience at the pharmacy. Now, I am also shocked about the rate at which things are extremely expensive right now. I could remember there was an antibiotic that used to cost about 1,500 naira, but now it's about 18,000 naira. And there's one that is about, it used to be 5,000, but now it's about 28,000 naira, and that's really on the high side. So research and development is something that's extremely important, and we'll be looking at ways of improving the local production of pharmaceuticals so that they will be easily accessible to people at an affordable prices. So currently in Nigeria, there are lots of research ongoing, both in the academia, in research institutes like NIPRI, that's National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, some pharmaceutical companies, as well as other private organizations. So a lot of research have been conducted at the moment.
All right. The pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria is estimated to be worth about $1.5 billion. I would like you to talk to us how far this industry has gone when it comes to local production. We used to have a situation where some of these raw materials are being imported, even if that is still the situation now. But talk to us. How far has this industry gone when it comes to local production of drugs and some of these pharmaceutical products?
All right. Thank you very much for that wonderful question. Now, let me just make emphasis on some happenings in recent times. We can see that Nigeria has a lot of specialists. Nigeria has a lot of specialists, has a lot of people that are skilled in the development of most of these medications, although there are lots of challenges. And in Nigeria alone, we have over 120 manufacturers of drugs and about 500 importers of pharmaceutical products as well. And in 2017, there was a study carried out which estimated that about $20.7 billion is being targeted at the African market. Like I made mention, and an indigenous an indigenous pharmaceutical company which was instituted last year with Professor Emeje as director general, are really doing a wonderful work. I could remember there was a time that NIPRI had a lot of formulation. I think they had NIPRI Immune, which is a locally formulated medication that has the tendency of improving the immune system of people. And there are others for anti-malarials like Chadomab. They are also very good. And we have like others as well. But then there are really not many. There are really not many. If you compare the number of local and the market over the locally
Oh my.
Oh, we're having a glitch there, and so it's a challenge. Continue the conversation with Beatrice David, but we'll do that as long as that glitch is solved. Internet fluctuations. So
He was actually trying to address the issue of local production of drugs, you know, how far the pharmaceutical industry has gone. You know, like I was saying earlier, you know, production in Nigeria now is challenging, you know, given the present economic realities as a businessman. And even for these producers of these drugs, they are not left out. For instance, you need to buy these raw materials. They are not readily available here. Some of them are to be imported because they are not things you can just buy on the shelf like that. And so to the cost of shipping these things is not going to be a tea party. Given the present realities, you have to source for finance. And that's why some of these local drug manufacturers, what they do is they partner with multinationals who provide these raw materials for them, and they produce locally. They have this arrangement, this partnership, depending on the level of MOU or the contract within the two parties. But by and large, you see some of these multinationals coming into that space to help with the funding, providing the logistics for the local production. Because you must agree with me, the more we have of local production of these materials, the better for us. It makes them readily available, it makes them cheaper. But to sustain production is a challenge, given the present reality, you know. And then the money you're supposed to spend on paying workers' salaries, making life better for your workers, you're spending it more in sustaining operations, in generating power. Look at what is happening now with the price of fuel now, the price of diesel now. You're going to spend more as a manufacturer. What it means is the money that you ought to naturally or devote to running your factory or operations, you're not spending more on sourcing for energy.
Yeah,
Alanta, I guess, is back. So let's engage him.
Yeah,
Glad to have you join us once again,
Yeah.
Kenneth.
So sorry, I had a network issue earlier.
Yeah, we understand it's not within your control. So let's go back to my earlier question. The question I asked was for you to talk about how that industry is faring when it comes to local production of drugs and pharmaceutical products. And you were talking about some of the challenges and the plight of these drug manufacturers. Please go ahead with your thoughts.
All right, so I don't know exactly how it stopped, but then let me rephrase. All right, so there are some pharmaceutical
All right, feel free, go ahead.
Who are doing an exceptionally great work, but the main challenge that these institutions are having are actually centered around the issues of funding and the current economic plight of the nation. Now, it has been estimated that the cost of manufacture of most of these medications, even locally, is extremely expensive. Yeah, I just learned that a multinational pharmaceutical company who was actually based in Nigeria some time ago, now they had to fold up and production in Nigeria because of the current realities like unstable supply and the hike in the price of PMS and diesel. So all of these things help in making it difficult and increasing the cost of locally manufactured medication. We also have some issues with regulatory agencies. Now, in as much as Nigerian regulatory agencies are doing an amazing work, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to this. A lot of times you discover that medications that are not even supposed to pass any of those tests, you see them in the market, how they come about, and who are the people that give approval for all of this. So regulatory agencies are also contributing to the downsides recorded. We also have inadequate infrastructural provisions. Now, just like we made mention of power issues, and also issues when it comes to electricity. We also have issues when it comes to like human development. There are some research skills that are desirable for this research to be carried out. Then there's no funding for researchers to be trained in those aspects. Now, it interests you to know that research and development is a very, very important thing. It's the life wire of any pharmaceutical industry. And it usually takes years. In fact, for a new drug to be produced, it usually takes about an average of 20 years, and it takes not less than $20 billion for a single medication to be produced. So it's a lot of money. And in Nigeria, the health sector is poorly funded, and these are some of the issues that are affecting the availability of locally manufactured medicines.
All right, before we look at why we have those issues, because you've mentioned a lot of issues, you've talked about the duration of time that it takes to develop a new drug, 20 years, that's 2 decades, a very long time. But let's look at the potency of the drugs that are being manufactured in Nigeria. Where you have a particular drug that treats an ailment, and you have foreign brands too, and someone gets to the drugstore, sometimes, especially when the money is available, the request is first for the foreign brand before the local brand. And even when they are offered the local brand, they tell you, oh, no, because there's a disbelief in the potency of that drug. Why do we have a situation like that? Does it have to do with a mindset, or it's a real factor or a real issue?
All right, so thank you very much for that wonderful question. I was actually privileged to work at a multinational pharmaceutical company in the UK, and I've also seen how things are done in Nigeria, so I actually know the difference. I've actually tested both scenarios. I can tell you for sure that we have pharmaceutical industries in Nigeria who are actually doing lots of work and amazing work, that the formulations are extremely good. But we also have industries in Nigeria whose formulations actually nothing to write them about. So I won't actually say it is as a result of mindset. Yeah, mindset is there, but then it's actually one of the realities. I know that like foreign companies, now even foreign drugs, like foreign medications, it's not from all companies that are of high reputation. We have to foreign countries that have poorly formulated medications, and most of the medications are not effective. That's because of a lot of issues with the regulatory system. So the issue of efficacy of locally manufactured medication against foreign or imported medication is a thing of personal interest. So now take for instance, we have, I don't want to mention the name of any pharmaceutical company, but we have some pharmaceutical companies here in Nigeria that are doing an amazing work, and most of their formulations are of high standard. I was opportune to be part of a research team that assesses the efficacy of most of these medications here at Kansas State University. And I can see that the bioequivalent of these locally manufactured medications are actually high as compared to like even foreign, as compared to their foreign counterparts. All right, but then on an average, formulations or medicines that are imported from high-income companies, most of the time, they have a very high standard as compared to some of the locally manufactured medicines in Nigeria.
I would like to find out from you, and I would like you to do more, analysis, and also give us, insight into the kind of research you think should be prioritized around this time. Looking at the peculiarity of our health sectors, the health issues, the ailments peculiar to this environment. What kind of research do you think should take place at this time, if you're in position to suggest?
All right, so if I'm in a position to suggest, I think more research should be carried out on infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are actually diseases that are caused by microorganisms or infection. Yeah, by microorganisms. So if you observe, most of the death recorded in Nigeria as a result of infectious diseases. In malaria, you see typhoid fever, you see a lot of other infectious diseases. And so if a lot of research if a lot of funds is invested in research that targets infectious diseases, it would go a long way in reducing the mortality rate of Nigeria and even increasing the life expectancy of Nigerians. And it is not only about the medication. We also have to look at research that targets preventions as well, because it's actually cheaper to prevent than to cure. So prevention is very, very important. So research, so funds should be invested in research that helps in prevention of infectious diseases, as well as in discovering medications that would help in its management. Now we have a lot of herbal medications. We have a lot of trees that are of medicinal importance. A lot of them, like this Dogoyaro neem tree, as a director indica, it has a lot of medicinal purposes. So if only the different isolates would be like isolated and then developed, you have a lot of locally manufactured medications. And that's actually because now that most of the time, if like in rural areas, you discover that they don't have access to quality like healthcare system. They don't have the luxury of obtaining conventional orthodox medications. But then they look for plants, and they discover that the plants are very, very effective in the management of these minor diseases. So the money should be invested, and time should also be invested in research that targets infectious diseases. In developed countries, they actually target, they actually invest in research works that has to do with pharmacogenomics. Now, pharmacogenomics is a branch of science that deals with the discovery of the discovery of the genetic profile of an individual, and then targeting or formulating or giving a medication that would have minimal side effects on that individual with an increased efficacy. So the major research that should be conducted in Nigeria should be one that targets infectious diseases.
Okay, I was going to ask you about access to raw materials because before you joined, Femi was talking about how difficult it is for the pharmaceutical industry to get raw materials because they import some of them. But you talked about the availability of some of these materials being found locally. It takes research to identify them and to explore their use. So let's talk about the research, quality research. What are some of the challenges in having quality research of not just new drugs, but even in the materials that we find around us? What are some of the barriers?
All right. So the major one is knowledge. Knowledge. Now, knowledge in the sense that what you do not know, you can actually do nothing about it. So knowledge is one very, very key thing that is hindering the exploration of these things. And in as much as we have a number of experts in Nigeria that are into these herbal medications and formulation of this, not a lot of them. This knowledge has not been widely available to people in settings. I know that apart from people in the pharmaceutical sector and in other departments such as botany and also herbal medicine, pharmacognosy, not a lot of people are actually aware of these things. Then the number two thing also is like funding. So even if people that have this knowledge want to carry out a study, there is no enough funding to carry out some of this work. I think I could remember I was sharing with a colleague of mine from time back who works with a pharmaceutical industry research institute in Nigeria, and he was just telling me the amount of funding they get. It's nothing to write home about. And that funding would not even be sufficient to carry out a study, a good research in a university, not to talk of in a research institution. So funding is one major thing as well. So I'm actually calling on the government and other private sectors that are in a position to help, to actually help in promoting and funding of pharmaceutical research, because we have a lot of materials on ground, and then they cannot be, like, most of them are not, like, they are not harnessed. Then we also have what we call, we also have issues that surround the, like, use of materials, like infrastructure. We may have this, but then there might not be sufficient equipment to carry out this study. I could remember that during my master's program, I did a study on calcium signaling, and the equipment that I used there, I've never seen it. So I was like discussing with other academics in Nigeria, and they said it is only available in only one institution in Nigeria. So availability of resources and equipment is also one of the issues. And all of these things can be solved if there is proper funding and proper funding and regulations of these areas.
All right. Irrespective of the challenges, how can research be tailored towards providing homegrown solutions? You know, earlier you talked about the use of plants, the use of herbs and all that. How can research take advantage of these local raw materials to provide homegrown solutions, the use of herbs and all that? And how do you harmonize that with the use of orthodox drugs?
All right. So I advise that research should not be left only for pharmaceutical industries alone. In our institutions like the universities, polytechnics, and other areas, I advise that research should be inculcated in the minds of the students at a very early age. Not only when they're in their final level, that they will now be told that, okay, choose a topic and come up with it, chapter 1 to 3 or chapter 1 to 4 and all. No, it should start early. So I feel if we are able to train like researchers, train students, and like ignite the passion for research in their hearts at a very young age, it helps them to think critically. It also helps them to look for solutions, to be problem solvers, and not people that would just complain about the system without having the requisite knowledge and skills to provide a solution. So research should be inculcated in the minds of students at a very young age. Then aside that, if these institutions are carrying out like their research, no matter how little it may look, it is actually significant. Most of these research that have been conducted, it is not only based on what they observe. Most times they have to carry out what we call literature review, so actually review what other people have done in other settings to be able to know what are the potentials of these medications or of these plants. So if we can be carrying out research, not only leaving it to pharmaceutical industries, but in our own little way as students, as early career researchers, as academics, if we can be carrying out our own research in our own little way and also publishing it, it actually go a long way in like helping. Now you never can tell. Even this COVID-19 vaccine, when it came forth, it's not as if like nothing is known about the COVID virus. Now a lot of studies have been conducted in the past about coronaviruses. So now when we now have an outbreak of this, now researchers have to go back. What is known about this topic? What is known? What's the gap? What do we need to work on to make it better? So that's what happens. So they have to go back to look at previous studies that were conducted. I actually believe that some of the researchers, some of the people that conducted these studies, they didn't know that this study would actually go a long way in solving problems. But then in their own little way, they did something. And when the time was right, it made the work of researchers easier. It made it easier. So we need to start carrying out research works, not only leaving it to pharmaceutical industries, but in our own little way, to start doing something and also sharing this knowledge with other people out there.
All right, finally, let me ask, who's to champion the cause of a research? Because we've talked about having synergy between the academia and the pharmaceutical industry in the area of research. And earlier while you were speaking, you talked about a new drug taking about 20 years to develop. But you also alluded to the fact that research can be proactive before an epidemic or an illness breaks out. So who's to champion the cause of a research in a particular area? Is it the academia? Is it government agencies or those in the pharmaceutical industry? Is there a place for collaboration in all of this?
Yes. Now, one of the parameters of this of identifying quality of research is by the number of collaborators. If you have people from like different sectors coming together to like share or say a thing or two about a particular topic based on their level of expertise, it helps to make a research work like solid. So the people that are to champion the cause of research are researchers, regardless of where you are, whether in the academia, in a private institute, or in a pharmaceutical company. You need to, like, researchers are the main thing. Researchers are the main champions, and this thing can help And the reason why collaboration is important is actually because it helps to make everything easier. Now you cannot say, okay, we don't need the government's approval, we just do our research work and then that is it. No, we need all of these people. We need researchers in the academia, we need researchers in pharmaceutical industry, we need people from government and other places to actually come together and help in development and the advancements of research. And that's because even in I remember I said it takes about 20 years for a new drug to be produced. And now within the 20 years, what are done? Number one, there has to be like discovery of drugs. Now new medications have to be discovered. Apart from that, it has to be clinical laboratory studies have to be carried out. If now we discover that now this new medication or this agent has efficacy against particular disease, or it's safe, we can now move it to
All right, Kenneth,
trials.
We need to wrap up the conversation now. All right, we actually want to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, for spending time with us on Any Exchange this morning. You've actually talked extensively on the plight of local drug manufacturers and what the industry looks like at this moment. So we want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on Early Exchange with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much for the platform.
All right. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with another discussion with another guest. It's always getting better and bigger on Early Exchange. So stay with us. Refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
It's still Early Exchange, and I can always say our obligation is to shape policy and advance development. With our discussion, we've been looking at the role of research and development. You know, earlier we talked about the pharmaceutical industry, some of the challenges being faced by local drug manufacturers, some of the researches, research projects and works that were being done. And we had our guest earlier, Kenneth, who talked about the plight of these local drug manufacturers. Now we want to look at health services, you know, and technology when it comes to the health sector. What are the desired services? How far has Nigeria gone when it comes to offering services compared to other climes? Then we are going to look at the trend of technology, how much of that has been embraced when it comes to the health sector. And we will do that immediately after this short break. Just stay with us.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodun Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment.
Should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Glad to have you join us on Early Exchange. Once we know you're always there with us, it excites us to always do more. And that's why we want to focus on the next discussion, talking about healthcare services and technology. We want to look at how far Nigeria has gone when it comes to healthcare services. What are the things needed, and what are the things needed to be done for us to be better when it comes to healthcare services and technology. And to provide a better perspective, we have been joined by an expert. We are being joined by Dr. Oladoyin Odubanjo, who is the Executive Secretary of TREE Nigeria Academy of Science. Dr. Odubanjo, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange this morning.
A pleasure to be with you. Good morning.
All right, great. Now, let's look at the healthcare services in Nigeria. I would like you to take us through a journey in how far we've gone when it comes to healthcare services in Nigeria in terms of, concept, in terms of technology, and the access to healthcare services in Nigeria. I would like to have your thought to start with.
Well, in a sense, you can say that we've gone forwards and backwards. Because we had healthcare plans, from inception that were meant to follow. But it looked like we go forward a little bit and come backwards a little bit. In a general sense, part of what we've had as a problem, perhaps as an evolving democracy, of course, with the interruption of military rule along the line, is the fact that we have not had a continuity of policy per se. So we've had a situation where we built well to start with, and we built the way we'll expect things to be built, which is that you build a strong primary health care service. That is where all effective health services, health systems are built. Your primary health care becomes your base layer of a pyramid, and it's the biggest. It has to be the strongest because that's the one that reaches everybody. And then on top of that, you build your secondary health care. So your primary health care is all your basic services, your vaccination services, delivery, maternal delivery. You look at basic treatment of some common diseases and all of that. Then you build on top of that the general, the secondary health service, which is slightly more specialized, and that's your general hospital, so to speak. So then what you cannot handle at your primary health care center, at your health post in your village, then you refer to the general hospital, and then on top of that becomes the tertiary health care, which becomes the extremely specialized services, where you have all these high-falutin machines, equipment, and specialists, who are trained and who narrow down on specific areas of health care. So you are dealing with orthopedic surgeons, you are dealing with, pathologists, you are dealing with that kind of specialization, so that when things start from the basic level, the people know that, this is beyond us. They refer to the secondary level. The secondary doctor looks and says, you are going to require specialized treatment. Then they refer you to your teaching hospital, your tertiary center. But things have gone haywire now. And the systems, especially the primary care system, is down and out almost. Secondary health care is gasping. And so people go to, your teaching hospitals to get treated for malaria, simple malaria or complicated. People go to they tell you, I'm going to LASOS, I'm going to LUS, I'm going to UCH, and all the person, I'm just not feeling well. And it's not going to go anywhere else. It's just going to go straight to those places. Now that tells you that things are upside down. And what we need to do, of course, is go back and restore the system, where people can actually have confidence in how they'll be managed at the primary level, how they'll be managed at the secondary level. Then we reduce also the pressure on the tertiary level, as it were now. So I think we built that system upwards, primary, secondary, tertiary, but now we've neglected those lower levels, and that is now causing chaos in the system. Thank you.
All right, so in rebuilding the system, having the primary healthcare service, the secondary healthcare level, and then the tertiary healthcare service, which deals with specialized issue functioning, there are new innovations in healthcare service. So along what line should that restructuring be? Give us some examples of how the healthcare system in Nigeria would need to be restructured considering the new innovations in healthcare service delivery.
Well, again, I'm not sure what you mean by new innovations. You didn't give me a specific example.
Okay. Now in healthcare service, we find some new innovations like telemedicine and some others like that, that has kind of brought patient care either to them or made it in a different way according to global best practices. So if we are to restructure our healthcare system, give us example of what the focus should be as we update our healthcare system using artificial intelligence, using technology.
Okay, right. One of the things we have to know is that technology, yes, tends to improve things, but it's not without side effects, so to speak. And you use technology to improve what is already working, okay? You can't use technology to improve what is not working at all, in a sense, that is. If, for instance, I were to look at somebody who's in a coma, for instance, there are monitoring devices. Your wristwatch can monitor your health indices, your blood pressure and what have you. But if you were virtually unconscious and dead, getting you that kind of wristwatch would not be the place to start. So I think the place to start, because your question is rebuilding, is for us to go back and look at our basic definitions, okay? One of the problems also with technology is the cost of implementation. Now, overall, you can argue for cost effectiveness and say on the long run, if I implement some of these things, they're going to save me money, correct, maybe. However, the cost of actually implementing is high, and that may serve as a stumbling block for me to even implement, to start it at all. Okay, so where do we start from? Is to go back and look at it. What is our basic provision necessary provision at every level? How many nurses do I need to have, or healthcare workers do I need to have in general at that primary healthcare level? Depending on where you live, for instance, what I'm talking about is the fact that if you woke up and you had a fever and a headache and you didn't feel too well, we need to build a system that enables you to walk down the road to that public primary healthcare center that you walk past probably most times now. Sometimes people don't even realize it's there, but we want you to walk into that place confidently, and be sure that you're going to meet a healthcare worker who's adequately trained for that level. And what that adequate training means is that that person knows how to identify that basic problem you have and say, oh, this is probably this, and then knows which test can be performed at that level to confirm what he or she believes it is, knows what to prescribe to you, and you get better, or what treatment to give you and you get better. That person also has that basic level of service to provide for you there, and that gives you the confidence to go there. But not only so, that person also knows the limits to be able to say, from what you are presented with, I'll have to send you further down the road, to the general hospital. Now, again, there they can send you further down the road. Now, when you take the specific example of telemedicine, the kinds of things that you do with those things is that you now begin to deal with shortages or with problems of access. Okay, you want to curtail or you want to address a problem of access. So when you are at that general hospital or wherever now, and they know that they cannot manage it, they need a specialist. They need somebody more specialized to review your case. And that specialist, for instance, they have only one in Lagos, or they have only 5 in Lagos, or the person they even have has traveled. You want to be able to access that person wherever he is, wherever he's working, and without you having to travel because you have said, I cannot afford to go there. I don't have the money. The man also cannot afford to be or to come to that center where you are. However, we can schedule something for you and say, if you come back on Thursday morning at 10 a.m., the man is going to be in front of a screen somewhere, He's going to review, he's going to speak to you just as we are speaking now. He's going to speak to you. He's like you were in his consulting room. He's going to review the tests we have done. He's going to review everything, and he's going to prescribe his treatment. So that's what you do with that kind of technology. Now, what's also happening, for instance, with AI is that people think that, oh, we can simply use that and substitute for the healthcare worker. And that's not really so. So, for instance, you can go on Google and put in your symptoms and say, what is wrong with me? And then it tells you something. The problem is that that may be correct sometimes, but also may be wrong sometimes. And that human touch of the ability to tell the difference between what the doctors would call differential diagnosis may be a problem for you using AI in that method, in that way. So it's something that we need to use, but we have to rebuild our foundations to a certain level for us to now plant the technology on top of it appropriately.
All right, you talked about the issue of foundation. Now let me take you back to the question asked earlier, which you made some submissions. I would like you to give us insight into the state of primary health care in Nigeria now, to secondary, to tertiary. Give us an overview of what is obtainable presently when it comes to services, and then what should be the ideal when it comes to services, when it comes to the structure and the component. I would like you to give us an insight into that.
Well, what we can say is that, you see, the primary health care is like, in a simple way to kind of explain it, is the healthcare system that should be as close to you as your local government is. So when we say the local government is what is closest to the people, primary health care is what should be operating within that local government and should be the one that is closest to you, that looks at all aspects of your healthcare, including prevention. Okay, so the primary health care has services that are concerned even with your housing, because housing will affect health. If you don't have proper housing being done, if houses are not built to certain specifications, you'll have a problem. If the way we are building, for instance, and everybody's building, and nobody is checking out the fact that everyone who builds is putting a borehole, but how close is that borehole to the next man's what do we call it, pit, waste pit in his house, we're going to have problems, because that waste pit is going to seep into the borehole next door, and those people in the house next door are going to be sick. So again, who is looking out for your vaccination, immunization of children? And even when we had the COVID-19, we had to vaccinate adults. Okay, so the primary health care is what reaches out at that level. And that's speaking largely about prevention now that I've just said, but also deals with your treatment. So when you have simple ailments, or I have a simple respiratory tract infection, I woke up, my nose is running, I have a headache, I have a fever and all that, all of those simple things should mean that I can go to the health care post or health post next door to my house and get services. And in terms of that, there are specifications for what the kinds of services are that they should be able to provide. Therefore, there are specifications for equipment that should be available at that level. There are specifications for human resources that should be available. Which kinds of doctors should you have, and how many, what kind of nurses and how many should you have, and other categories of healthcare workers. What kinds of drugs should be available in that kind of center. Now, all of those things are laid out. We have documents that have laid them out, that this is what we should have. However, what we have is a situation where, of course, maybe along with the local government, the primary health care services have been largely abandoned, except in a few places. I think one of the best functioning places, for instance, not to praise anyone, is Lagos in terms of primary health care services. But in most places, it doesn't even exist. And sometimes, and even in Lagos, we're talking about, one of the big challenges now that everybody is facing with all of the services, and of course, especially the primary health care services, is human resource. So we don't have enough, we don't have adequate human resources. You can't get enough doctors, you can't get enough nurses, and all of that. And so people are talking of task shifting. okay, which is that can you train other people to do some of these things that these people were doing, so that the few of these nurses, doctors, and pharmacists that are remaining can focus on some of the slightly more difficult tasks? Can we train other people in the simpler things that they do? But again, that comes with certain risk. So WHO is speaking about that, but it comes with certain risk. It comes with risk of quackery, for instance. So we have a system, and what happens with it is that I always say the best way, if you want a description or a picture of it, is to ask everybody that you know around you, and ask them, if you, first and foremost, do they know where their primary health care center is? Secondly, do they attend the place? Do they go there for anything? Or are they all busy going now looking for a private hospital that they may not even be able to afford sometimes? So it tells us that we have an issue. It tells us that things are not running the way they are. And in most cases, when you hear any attention is being given to the primary level now, it's about building. People talk about we're going to build primary health care centers in all local governments. But the question is, what about equipment? What about human resources? What about funding? I have managed primary care centers in the past, and funding was a major issue. The interest to run the place was ridiculous. So when you look at all of that, you can then understand why those places are not functioning the way they should be functioning, and therefore now why we are also struggling with many areas of our healthcare delivery. So we are struggling with vaccination, achieving optimum vaccination levels, for instance. We even struggled, if you ask me, we struggled with COVID-19 because of the system that is upside down. Because if that system functions, it's easy. Health education will take place at that level. That healthcare center is closest to the people. It will engage the communities very effectively, and the communities have already developed trust in that center and the staff in that place. So it's easy to get cooperation. If they start telling the people you need to wear a mask, you need to wash your hands, the people will do it effectively. Please stay home. This is why we want you to do so. They will do it, because of the trust built on the platform of effective service that has been carried out over time. Thank you.
Okay, you talked about several challenges bedeviling in the healthcare sector. Let's look at the way forward now, because we're looking at research today. So in what role will research play in improving healthcare service in Nigeria?
Well, research is fundamental, to any progress. If you look at one of the things I like to say is that when people go on and you look at our ministries, for instance, over time, staff who are sent to the Department of Research, it's almost like they're being punished. If they post you there, it's because they don't really like you. Whereas research is the bottom line of what you're doing. You must constantly, in fact, whether we like it or not, whether we try to or not, we generate data on a daily basis. Okay, people are going to hospitals, whether private or public, actually, because I've missed to emphasize the role of the private hospitals also. Okay, but there's data all over the place. People are showing up in hospitals, they're reporting sick for one thing or the other, or they seek education on one thing or the other. All of that data needs to be processed, for instance, by somebody or the other. Somebody needs to be analyzing. That data needs to be collected effectively and needs to be analyzed in real time. Somebody needs to be looking at them. That is how you quickly detect. Sometimes we hear stories of there's cholera outbreak and so number of people have died. In fact, sometimes it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks before we know. But if the data was being collected effectively and reported effectively, analyzed effectively, and in real time, you find out that detection is faster. We will know when something is out of place. Somebody will point it out. There was a diarrhea disease case that reported in this local government, and 2 people have died yesterday from that disease. They quickly send somebody to check what's going on, look at further details. What were the symptoms and all that. By the 3rd day or something, somebody has pointed out there's a malaria outbreak, 3 people have died. You've already started putting in measures to curtail it. Not that we wait for 2 weeks and then we're talking of 30 people have died. Okay, so that's how research works. Research is, we tend to talk about something and that's evidence-informed policy making. So you need the research to inform the policies that we make. Okay, and that's why I said that within the running of government, research is fundamental. Perhaps the most important department in the ministries and all that is the Department of Research. Otherwise, we're going to be doing guesswork. We're going to be making policies. We're going to be implementing things without knowing whether that's what we should be doing in the first place, or knowing whether what we are doing is actually effective. Because as you start to implement your policy, you've made the policy based on research, and as you start to implement that policy, you need to also be checking. You know, somebody needs to be looking at that data and be saying, yes, we're on the right track, yes, the thing is working, or no, it looks like nothing is changing, or things are even getting worse. And then you need to stop again and say, hey, why is it getting worse? And then they're still analyzing and saying, it looks like these are the problems. And then you come up with another policy or program, and you also start implementing that to address those problems that you have identified. So research is the bedrock, of development, as it were. Without the research, I was looking up and I saw that, for instance, with COVID-19, just on vaccines. So why did they develop vaccines? Why did they get vaccines in so quickly, which bothered many people? People were also concerned because they saw the need for research and they spent money on it. I saw, for instance, the UK government spent £88 million on COVID-19 vaccine research, and that is just on the AstraZeneca vaccine alone. And mind you, that was not a government vaccine. So they pumped money into it because the government saw the need for research, that we need to research this and find an answer very quickly. Okay, even now, they put out at least £10 million towards researching other diseases that are capable of causing epidemics. Okay, and that's how things work. So we need to sit back down also and start putting out the funding, to looking at it and saying, okay, this is Nigeria. What are our real problems in Nigeria? Because there are also certain things that nobody is going to start looking at for you because it doesn't threaten their society. But those things are a problem to you. So we talk about certain diseases periodically, Lassa fever, for example. We need to start asking the question, how much money are we putting into research? To research into that disease further, research into the prevention, research into vaccination, research into treatment, research into diagnosis. How quickly are there simple things that people can do to diagnose, simple tests that we can implement that won't cost a lot of money. So that's how research works. It helps you to be more effective and sometimes just more cost effective in the sense that you're even spending less money now to handle a disease that you used to spend a lot more on before. Thank you.
All right, that's great. Let's look at the area of healthcare financing. Research has also shown that most Nigerians, they pay for healthcare services out of their pocket rather than depending on health insurance. I'd like you to talk to us what can be done to bridge this gap in order to make healthcare affordable for Nigerians.
Well, there are several things, I'm happy you mentioned health insurance because healthcare, we tend to say that everybody is probably just one disease away from poverty, and that means that diseases, if you are hit by a very terrible disease, it's very capable of sending you to the bank, sending you lending money, selling all you have. It's very easy to become poor, if you have a bad disease. And the second thing around that also is that people don't save up for disease. We all don't expect it. We all wish and expect to be in good health one way or the other. And that's where health insurance then comes in. You can't afford it when it happens. We tend not to save up for it, So at a point in time, as an institution where people were being given money as, healthcare allowance, and I said, no, stop that. Don't give it, because they will not save that money as healthcare allowance. They're going to buy gari and what have you, and rice and all that with that money. Nobody saves up for disease, okay? So I said it's better you pay that money towards health insurance so that when they are sick, they can actually go and just access healthcare without now worrying about where the money is going to come from. So that's the value of healthcare insurance. The fact that once you have it, then you start talking of access. People can access care with confidence, but they also can access even sometimes expensive care that they would not be able to afford no matter how hard they try. However, what that also begins to bring up for us is that for us to bridge that gap, therefore, we also, number one, must educate people appropriately. Okay, so people must know this simple kind of breakdown that I'm saying, which is that sickness comes, and when it comes, you probably won't have money saved up, and it's capable of making you broke. Okay, and then helping people to understand the concept of what insurance is, which is that you pay this little amount of money, and when you're sick, they're going to ask you to pay 20,000 naira or whatever for, uncomplicated malaria. You went in, you had fever, you were really shaking and all that and all. But they treat you and you're spending 10,000, 15,000 naira. You probably don't have that in pocket at that time, and you don't need to think about it. Okay, but you've been paying 1,000 naira, maybe. I'm just using hypothetical figures now. So you've been paying 1,000 naira perhaps every month, which you could do without, really. And then the day you needed it, you could walk in freely, or your wife needed to give birth to a baby, you could walk in freely to a healthcare service. However, you then must ensure that as we have started, for instance, that truly those who are participating in it can access the healthcare that they have been paying a premium for. Okay, and that they access it and it's effective, it's good quality. So it also behoves, the government and the HMOs and the management organizations that are, providing all of that to ensure the quality of service that people receive when they then need it. It's the same thing that applies to your insurance in general. If you ask most Nigerians, do you have car insurance? For those who have cars, they will tell you yes. What kind of insurance is third party? Why don't you have comprehensive insurance? Oh, they say insurance. We just did it for legal purposes. Insurance company will start giving you stories and all that if something happens and you need to claim. Now, what is that? Broken trust. So that is what we must ensure doesn't happen. And where it has happened, we must repair it and repair it aggressively. Now, the more I can tell people, or of people who have accessed good health care, and you say, this must have cost you a lot of money. And the man says, no, I didn't pay. I've been paying my health care insurance. It will encourage you also to ask more questions and buy into it. So we need to educate people, but we also need to ensure that as people get on board, so we want to close that gap, as they get on board, they must get what we promised they would get when they need that care. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Oladoyin Odubanjo, we want to appreciate you for spending time with us on Early Exchange this morning. It's been highly productive and resourceful having you on our show this morning. I want to thank you for your submission.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay. Early Exchange is still ongoing. You don't need to go anywhere because we still have more in stock for you. Just stay with us. As we go on this short break, we'll have another conversation with another guest. Stay with us.
Agriculture is a key player in the economy globally, serving as a source of livelihood for millions of people. However, the sector is exposed to various risks, such as climate change, diseases, and market volatility. In the transformation of agriculture, a range of stakeholders including farmers, governments, the private sector, NGOs, and research institutions are at the center of the affairs. One of the key drivers for success is the ability to work together and plan for challenges. This is like seeds for a good harvest. Sometimes storms surface, such as pests, unpredicted weather, or not enough rain. This is when risk management steps in. It involves identifying potential challenges that could affect farming. Farmers then make plans to handle these risks and minimize their impact, ensuring a successful harvest. This might mean using weather forecasts to decide when to plant, applying pest control strategies, or diversifying crops to spread out the risk. By being prepared and making smart choices, farmers can steer their farms safely through the ups and downs of farming, ultimately leading to a fruitful harvest. Farmers and experts team up to share knowledge and tools to grow strong, healthy crops. When farmers, scientists, and communities collaborate, they can tackle any storm. Through this collaboration, farming becomes not just a job, but a community effort. Each farmer becomes a part of a bigger family, united by the mission of transforming the land into a land of plenty. Grace Komolafe, Souk News.
The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Did stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, beginning with the last line of Grace Komolafe's report on the agriculture sector in Nigeria, she said, transforming the land to a land of plenty. Now, what would research help? In what will research help in achieving that? Nigeria has such a large quantity of arable land. How can we transform it from a land that is fruitful to a land of plenty? Achieving food security has been a top issue that every government has tried in one way or the other to achieve in Nigeria. And so let's look at the role the research will play in it as we talk to Ugochukwu Ogwike, Head of Operations, Azukin Normal Nigeria Limited, who's joining us virtually this morning. Before we join Ugochukwu, there's a man who also eats. I eat, he eats as well. And so let me ask him about his hope in seeing a Nigeria where there is plenty, not just fruitfulness, but there is plenty of food, and not just the staples, but even the ones that we import.
Blessing, what gives you the impression that I eat?
Oh, you do? Okay, maybe you could eat and you can tell us about that.
All right, but I got to your point. You know, Nigeria has about 90.8 billion hectares of arable land, which is to tell you we are blessed. When it comes to availability of lands, Nigeria has it in abundance. So, but how well has that been utilized over the years? That's the question, and that's why we're looking at this issue of agribusiness. You know, it has gone from agric is more of business now.
Yes.
With the innovations that we have, the advent of technology, it has gone more advanced from the subsistence kind of farming to now commercialized kind of business. So for me, Nigeria has the potential. It's just for us to tap into it. And I see that, yes, Nigeria, with research and development, that can be geared towards ensuring that there is development in that sector. Most importantly, you can have research in the area of having improved seedlings. One of the challenges we have when it comes to agriculture is having access to the right seedlings in the right quantity, And with what research has been tailored towards now, it can help towards achieving improved seedlings, whereby you can have varieties and improve, productivity when it comes to agribusiness. And I think our guest is ready for us to give us better insight into that.
Okay, you didn't admit to eating. Maybe Ugochukwu will admit to doing that. Hello, Ugochukwu. Welcome to Early Exchange.
It's a pleasure being here.
Let's look at the agriculture sector, agribusiness. Yes, we've been doing, Nigeria has been in agriculture from time immemorial, but fine-tuning that practice, how would research help, and to what area should the research be focused?
Like you rightly pointed out, agriculture has been our way of life, and where we're coming from, agric has always been treated more like a cultural thing than a business. But, the advent of innovations and technology and all of that, rapid urbanization is now beginning to, stress the need for agric to be viewed from a different perspective and to be viewed as a business. And so every time you talk about business, one of the things you're looking at is profitability, and you're looking at efficiency, you're looking at better management. And that's the only way the sector grows. So in my view, the step in the right direction is, first of all, to begin to reorient our people to see agriculture not just as culture or as a norm, but to begin to view it from the perspective of business. And the moment we begin to do that, we'll start asking the right questions, and then we'll begin to, employ the right strategies. As to how research and development will, benefit the agricultural space in Nigeria, I think one thing we need to begin to do is adaptation. So look at it from this perspective. About 80% of the entire Nigerian population, or homes, produce one thing or the other. Either they have a garden, or they have a small farm, a vegetable farm, one thing or another. We're blessed with arable lands. And so we necessarily do not have to view agriculture the same way the Western world views it, where we talk about large farms and contiguous farms where we have thousands and thousands of hectares. No, we have to adapt, research and development to our own climate, where we have practically everyone, labeled a smallholder farmer. And then, of course, as you know, about 90 to 95% of farmers in Nigeria are smallholder farmers, which means we necessarily do not cultivate contiguous land. So we must begin to look in the area of seed development. And then when it comes to mechanization, we must look to adaptable mechanization, in other words, modular mechanics. For instance, think about modular planters, think about, modular harrowers, ridgers, and then, all of those stuff that are not as bogus and big and expensive to maintain. Things that smallholder farmers can easily, tools they can easily use that gives them the same result and the same rate of efficiency. These things will naturally boost our productivity and our efficiency, and ensure that agriculture becomes a sustainable business that the young people can look towards as a means of earning. Thank you.
All right. When it comes to research and development, I'm sure you will agree with me that data is inevitable. Talk to us about the availability of data, and then how well has these data reports or findings or recommendations being made, how well have they been utilized over the years?
So, in all honesty, like I said, it is one. You see, data is data until it is retrofitted to specific needs. First things first, most of the data we have in the agricultural space, of course, the National Bureau of Statistics are doing great and fantastic job, availing us data from rainfall patterns to production and then to yield and all of that. They're doing a great job. Every time you go to the site, you find, the availability of data concerning, especially concerning the agricultural space and other spaces in general. But when you talk about the application of data towards solving problem, it has to be retrofitted, which brings me to the kinds of research that we have been published in the nation today. If you go to most of our higher institutions, for those who are undergraduate, the postgraduate research, the question is how many of those researches are tailor-fitted or retrofitted to specific industry demand? How many of those researches are sponsored by the industry where they are actually needed? So a student goes to school or the higher institution, and then of course, as a demand or as a prerequisite, he has to do a research before he is graduated or awarded a degree or a postgraduate degree, as the case may be. And that student goes, picks a random topic, and then yes, he breaks through, but that research is in some faculty filing system or cabinet and never used. So this should give us a wake-up call on the need for the private sector and the educational institutions within the nations to collaborate in fostering or encouraging research or driving research in particular directions, areas of need, such that at the end of the day, these research are easily adopted because they are already retrofitted to solve private sector problems. A lot of the researches we have are just for keepsakes and knowledge sake, and then most times for those research to be applicable to the private sector, they have to be retrofitted. In other words, work has to go into it. Work has to go into it for those research to become usable, and I really think that's limiting the rate of adaptation for most of the data we have out there. So yes, data will play a key role in the agricultural space, very, very important and very key. But that data has to be retrofitted. It has to be tailor-fit to solve the specific issues that the agricultural sector is facing. And until that is done, we will continue to pump out data and data that necessarily are not applicable or cannot be used within the macro niches or the value chain niches where they are required.
Okay, so in being intentional about research topics, what are the key areas you would like for research to target in agriculture and agribusiness?
So I began to mention a few earlier on. For instance, retrofitting research, especially in the area of mechanization. One of the things that we lack in the Nigerian agribusiness space is technology. We lack sophistication. And this hoe and cutlass production mentality is not going to take us to the future that we all desire, a future that is full of abundance, you know. So first things first, we must get production right. So researches should be tailored in the area of a production. For instance, modular planters that are both effective and, you know, durable. Looking at modular harrowers, ridgers. Most of our farmers cultivate less than 5 hectares contiguous space, and when you see that, you cannot get that kind of farmer to go invest into procuring a tractor. I mean, the cost implication is really, really huge. And every time, you know, our first idea is to gather these farmers into, you know, a cooperative so they can get tractors. And you and I know that facilities that are communally owned necessarily are not in the best of shapes. We've tried this for many years and really, it doesn't work. And in most instances, if it's communally owned, then the whole issue of who uses when and who uses the whole rationing of such equipment, we work with these farmers and we see the issues that this raises. So rather than go that route, I'd rather we begin to, you know, invest finances and research in the areas of effective modular techs that we can use. Of course, we have these Chinese planters, and many times it goes really, really bad. The accuracy after, you know, planting a hectare or two with it drops drastically. So we need to invest, you know, in the area of modular tech, you know, that will allow our farmers do what they need to do, and then in an effective manner that encourages, number one, increased productivity, number two, saves time, number three, encourages profitability for this smallholder farmers. So that's one area. The second area is in the area of seed. As it stands right now, we do not have a lot of work in the direction of seed development. Most of the seeds that are being sold in the country are at best low yielding. If you come to the areas of maize production, Nigeria is still struggling between seeds that have a yield potential of 3.5 to 5.5 metric ton. In the Western world, we're talking about seeds with yield potentials of almost at least 100 metric ton. Now, what are the problems? When you go there, take those seeds and you bring them home, they are unable to survive. They've not been retrofitted. They've not been adapted to our climate and stuff, so they don't do well. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to go in the area of seed development as well. Then number three, area of post-harvest management or handling. Now, at the moment, we do not have a problem of production. With all of our crude ways of producing food, Nigeria is still doing fairly well. We still have lots of tomatoes, perishables, onions, okra, just name them. We have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of metric tons of cereals produced annually. But when it comes to post-harvest handling and management, it is poor. So Nigeria is still suffering a lot of damage in the area of post-harvest losses. And so we need to begin to, you know, employ research and technology and development in the area of post-harvest management. Back in the day, we used to have national silos where excess grains are repatriated to and held until the time of need. Right now, those facilities are you know, at their best dormant. And so we need to begin to look into this. Government needs to wake up and begin to drive in consonance with the private sector research in the areas of post-harvest management. This way, we are able to preserve the little we are producing while we are looking to improve our productivity. So we have a problem. We're not producing optimally, and even the little we produce, we are not managing it, you know, optimally. So We are not effective when it comes to production, and we're not effective when it comes to managing the little that is produced. So on both ends, we're losing. So I think that first of all, we need to push research in the area of mechanization and the modular mechanization, to be specific. We need to push research in the area of seed development, and then we need to push research in the area of post-harvest management to prevent losses. Thank you.
Okay. Let me ask you, what do you think can be done to facilitate the proper utilization of data research, at the national level, state level, even at the local level, to ensure that there's proper development in the agri sector? What can be done to encourage proper utilization of data research, and also to attract funding of research at the national level, the state level, and the local level?
So very little can be done without effective policies in place. We have lots of businesses that come into this country, and both foreign and domestic companies who do business. And when you look at what they're doing and you look at their books, you find out that very little or nothing is dedicated to research and development. So if, for instance, you come into Nigeria and we have a policy in place that says, okay, 10% of your profit or 5% of your profit must go towards the development of that sector, I'm not sure we'll be having this conversation. We would have been way past this point. So we have people taking in from sectors and they are giving nothing back. So we must have policy frameworks from government that ensures or that enforces the give back system. You take, you give. So if we had policies in place that ensured that private sector companies, whether domestic or foreign, are giving back to this sector from where they take so much, then we would have been past, where we are today. So I deeply encourage our policymakers to look into it. First of all, the private sectors will not just wake up and partner with the educational sector to give them money to do some research. They are happy taking what they can take every year, every business quarter, and take whatever they can take. But if we had policies that insist, they say, okay, 5%, 10% of your annual profit must be pushed in the direction of research and development, then we'll definitely have research institutes that are uniquely tailored to solve private sector problems. For instance, I took a trip to Station F in Paris, one of the largest incubator programs in the world, and there you find different unicorns, multinationals, from Beaners to Microsoft Word, name them. They're all there. And what do? They create an environment where they train future entrepreneurs, where they train business owners on blockchain, agriculture, science, and tech. Just name it. Everyone has a hub there, and these people are pumping millions of dollars in there to train, businesses and to train next generation business. So if you have an idea that can solve a Microsoft problem, they have money for you. They're waiting for you. If you have an idea that can solve a Binance problem, they have money and they're waiting for you. These things are only made possible because policies have been put in place. If you've got to function, you've got to give back. And so if you were to visit Station F, you find out that most of these multinationals are there. And what's the difference? We have big, gigantic companies in Nigeria doing business, and yet we have nothing. You do not go to educational institutions and see their partnerships there. Nothing. They just take and take and take. And, at most, all we see is some funny CSR program. But we must have policies from government. Okay. And when we have policies from government, it becomes easy to drive collaboration in the area of retrofitted research.
All right, quickly, in a few seconds, speak to us about regulation, standardizing the research, because some persons or some in the agri sector have aversion towards research because of the fear of the safety or how safe they are, particularly when you talk about the modified products, genetically modified products.
So when we talk about research. Research in itself, there's an aspect of research that takes care of safety. There's an aspect of research that takes care of what do you call it? There are different levels of licensing that is required to do any form of research. Research is holistic in itself and takes care of that.
Okay.
And we're not asking for research in areas that are unknown. We're talking about there's nothing that you want to research on that practically does not exist already.
All right, thank you very much, Ugochukwu Ogwike, the head of operations, Azikiwe Normal Nigeria Limited, for your time with us today on Early Exchange, talking extensively about the role of research in agriculture and agribusiness. We value your contributions. All right, that's it on this segment. We're going to quick break, return to look at another issue that research will solve in Nigeria. Stay tuned.
The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
It's still Early Exchange, where you get the best of analysis, the best of conversation when it comes to shaping policy and advancing development. We've been looking at the role of research and development in Nigeria. Earlier, we talked about the agri-business, the agri-sector, to look at what research will do and should be when it comes to that sector. And now we want to look at the infrastructural development in Nigeria, to look at what research has done and what should do to improve the state of infrastructure in Nigeria. Shortly, we're going to be joined by an expert. That's Engineer Mike. He's going to join us shortly to look. Oh, okay. And now we're being joined by Engineer Mike Oshoba, who is a nation builder. He's here with us to share his insight when it comes to infrastructural development in Nigeria. Engineer Mike, glad you have joined us on NEXTech this morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's my pleasure being here.
Great to have you on Early
Thank
Exchange.
you.
All right. So let's set the ball rolling with you giving us an assessment of infrastructural development in Nigeria. From your area of expertise, you've embarked on several projects over the years. Talk to us about your assessment of infrastructural development in Nigeria, most importantly when it comes to the area of research and development.
Okay, in the area of infrastructural development, we haven't done very well over the last 60 plus years. We've had starts and stops in certain areas like roads construction, but there hasn't been a holistic plan to really move the country, from third world to probably first world infrastructure. And this is because of various reasons, mostly no political will to do the right thing. So Nigeria as a country has suffered immensely from this lack of foresight in doing the needful at that time, when it was even cheaper. I hope you can hear me.
Very well. We're with you, sir. Please go ahead.
Good. Yeah. So we have a lot of catching up to do, right? And it boils down to leadership having the political will, as I mentioned earlier, to drive infrastructure development in all sectors. Right now, it's lacking. I could give you an example. In power, we're doing around 3,000 megawatts. I won't talk about America, what they generate, but in India, or no, let's go to Pakistan, which is similar to Nigeria. They got independence at the same time as Nigeria in the 60s. In one sector alone, they are doing 7,000 megawatts. That's in wind, right? So that's renewable energy. If Pakistan could generate 7,000 in using only one of the renewables instead of hydro, they're just looking at wind for now. That sector generates 7,000. It shows that we haven't even started. Are you with me? So it's really boils down to leadership, having that political will to drive this development in all sectors. Right. Thank you.
Okay, let's look at the impact of research on cost effectiveness and efficiency of some infrastructure projects that we have in Nigeria. In what way would research ensure that? And what are the key areas that we should be looking at as it concerns research and infrastructure?
Research is very important. You see, nothing really is done without research, right? Because research is what drives industry. It drives the products, it drives the processes you have in place. It drives improvement in those products and processes. So research is very important. Unfortunately, we don't take it as important as it should be. Now, when it comes to research, really R&D, research and development, which is R&D, short form R&D, it's really done in universities. There's a lot of funding coming from the private sector and public sector to finance these R&Ds, right? So that the universities come up with better solutions and processes, right, for what you're trying to achieve. The last caller was talking about agriculture. It's in those institutions, I should say, that you of learning, that a lot of research is done in how to improve seedlings and general yields in agriculture. So we need to take it more seriously. In terms of infrastructural development, the research is not as much as if it was to do with industry. Because when you're talking about research, really, and development, you're really talking about how you can improve on a particular product. You understand? Like, for instance, if you manufacture toothpaste, how can we make toothpaste better? So you do a lot of research and do something like that. But if you're talking about building an airport or a power station, what exactly is research and development you're going to do? It's more of a feasible, you're looking more into, is it feasible what you're trying to do? And how best to go about that project? Because most of those things are not produced here. In other words, if you are building something, you import most of the materials for the plants, like the turbines. So how the research and development for turbines will not really apply, if you know what I mean. What will apply is how best to use the resources available to achieve what you want to achieve. Thank you.
All right, let's look at the area of financing. It has been a serious challenge. And I would like you to talk to us your experience when it comes to the issue of infrastructural development, because to tailor data or research towards infrastructural development, funding is critical. How can this be achieved to ensure that we have proper research and development in that sector, taking into consideration the issue of funding?
Sorry, could you say that again? Funding for the research and development sector, or funding for a particular funding projects? I'm a bit confused. What could you say?
Okay, I made reference to funding of research in order to be able to facilitate the development of infrastructural projects.
Okay, I get you. You see, it all boils down to governments investing, right, in this sector for now. The private sector can get involved, like companies, maybe the big players, maybe like in telecoms, could fund something in a university, and maybe to improve one of their processes or what have you, right? But for now, in a developing nation, most things are driven by government, right? They take the lead, and there has to be sincerity. So if the funding is made available, right, the universities then can do the necessary work that will achieve the results. Right, so funding is very important. However, right now it's minimal. There's no funding. Most things are imported. The infrastructure blueprint in Nigeria is very poor, so we don't have that. So it's what I'm trying to say is that we're trying to solve the problem from starting from the middle, right? You can't get into R&D without first having leaders who are sincere and have the vision of what they want to achieve. Because if the R&D is done and nobody touches it, then it's just a waste of time. So you have to have leaders that are visionary and are sincere, and then they put the necessary funding and backing into getting it done. Let me give you an example. In America today, I'm talking about the fire sector now. In America today, one of the states or one of the cities in America has 255 fire stations. We talked about power initially, comparing our total generation with what was done in Pakistan. In Nigeria today, in America today, in New York City, they have 255 fire stations. In Lagos, the mega city of Nigeria, they have 19, right? Hello, are you listening?
Yeah, we're with you.
That's less than 20%. Less than 20%, right? Less than 20% of what New York City has, but we have a larger population than New York, right? Now, who exactly is going to build these stations? If it's too expensive to build, government will contract, do the necessary work by contracting the universities, the research and development to find cheaper ways to build power stations and equip them with equipment being assembled in Nigeria, right? That is not even being done. Everything is imported from China. Are you with me? So we haven't even started, you know, government, what we should really do is, have somebody, hello? I got cut off. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Hello? Yes, what we really should do
is
invite somebody from government to explain. Okay, you also invite somebody in government to explain why the funding and the wherewithal is not there to move the R&D forward so that we can get the economic benefits of it. Are you with me? Because it's not being done. Right? In the 60s, you had, let me just go back to agriculture, which was what we were talking about initially, or earlier. You had the IIT in Ibadan set up, right? I think it was under Gowon, right? And the foreigners are still there till today. That's an institute that is funded also by certain Western governments as well. They get some funding from them to help Nigeria grow effective yields in agriculture. You know, what are we doing? Nobody is helping. And like I said earlier, it's government who is the biggest funder. So they should drive it. But they're not doing that because we don't have those who are visionary right there, right, you know, in government right now. So we were just dilly-dallying, going back and forth, right? And it's mostly talk. They don't walk the talk. They just talk, and nothing is being done. That is why we are where we are. It's not an accident. Nigeria finds itself with this deficient infrastructural development compared with the Asian tigers and other countries. Thank you.
Okay, but some of the areas for development that you talked about, they seem to be projects that will need lots of technology and lots of research. But let's look at some low-hanging fruits, so to speak, that Nigeria can look at. For instance, the issue of clean water and sanitation, particularly when we talk about clean water. Can we find, or can we have local research that deals with that?
Yes.
Access
That's a very
to clean
good
water.
question.
Access to clean water.
Yes, we can. Yes, you can. You see, Nigeria is blessed with a lot of intelligent people, right? But unfortunately, most of them, their spirits have been killed. The one I'm talking about now is in the universities. So the experts that could do the research and come up with technologies and get the funding to do this, because it's not cheap. There'll be a lot of trials and errors going on to get a commercially viable technology out, say, for instance, in water, right? And the funding is not there. But yes, it can be done, right? If, like I keep on mentioning, the political will is there. You fund them, you invest in them, it takes some years, they keep on trying, and then the technology is there. Water is essential, right? Right now, we have a lot of pipe-borne diseases because a lot of people don't have clean drinking water. We're using borehole technology here, which is not what we should be doing. It's affecting, you know, there'll be issues with hopefully we won't start having earthquakes here in the near future. But those are not the technologies you use in a nation this size, right? So the technologies are there, but it goes back to the same old thing. The funding for efficient and improved technology to build these things are not there. We have not invested. So that's not even, you know, we can't even start talking about R&D. Let the investments come first. That we have this amount of resources that we want to apply to, say, water development, technology in water. The institutes come up with the technology, the assembly plants are put in place to now manufacture the technology and deploy them nationwide. That's the process. It's not even, we haven't even started that. So we're not producing those things. What we do is just buy from abroad, get the foreigners to come in here and do that. Push your engineers and everybody else aside, and they come and do it, or the Chinese, you know, come and who will do most of the projects in Nigeria now. So we have that problem. But it's a doable one if we trust our professionals. But right now, government isn't doing that. Even look at healthcare. There's a lot of development we could do that is needed in healthcare. We're not investing in healthcare. And for instance, none of the leaders use the healthcare here. They go abroad. So the doctors are also feeling as if they're inadequate. But if you start having your leaders using them here, the investments will be made here. The doctors will improve. More Nigerians will not want to travel abroad for healthcare. They'll be using the hospitals here because the government is driving it. They've sanctioned and endorsed the Nigerian healthcare. So it goes across. You see, the whole infrastructural deficiency is you have to place it at the doorstep of government. To move Nigeria from where we are to where we should be, which is like a second world country in infrastructural development, takes a lot of hard work. Right. It's not rhetoric. It takes a lot of hard work. You sit down, you plan well, you give back into the necessary groups and sectors that will drive this R&D to make sure Nigeria moves forward. I don't know how much government is investing in agriculture. I don't know how much they're investing in healthcare, education, in terms of how to improve processes. Right, that we could do a bit of research on to get some information. But I consider it very low because in the sectors we operate in, that's hardly any investment. Everything is imported, right? We don't build anything here. Like I mentioned, turbines are not being built here. Cars are not, nothing is being built here really, right? So we haven't even started. So when you move into R&D, you are talking about improving on something that's already there. That's my point. Right, so it has to start from there. Then we start working on. Okay, government has put so much money into this university in improving technology for water. Okay, they've got to this stage. This is what it is. They have an assembly plant that is now going to produce it and supply all the local governments, the 774 local governments nationwide, and things are now improving. That's how you drive this thing, step by step, logically. Thank you.
All right. Now, let's focus on core infrastructural issues now. One of the issues we have to talk about is the issue of building collapse in Nigeria. In recent times, the issue of building collapse has been of concern. Talk to us. What are the things responsible for building collapse in Nigeria, and what can be done to checkmate this negative development?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question again. That is years of neglect in investing in the education sector, right? In the 50s and 60s, buildings were not collapsing in Nigeria. I can say this confidently, right? Up to even the 70s, they had a policy whereby, right, as you build, you get approvals for certain milestones, right, before you just continue to build high rises. In Ibadan, we had Cocoa House, which was one of the oldest buildings in Nigeria at the time, high rise. It's still standing today. What technology was used at the time to build it? We had some of the best engineers, some of the best structural engineers, architects, surveyors in those days, right? The lack of funding in universities is producing a poor quality graduates. Are you with me? So those that are supposed to ensure that those buildings don't collapse are not properly trained in the first place. We haven't started talking about the corruption part of it. We're just talking about the quality of person who is in charge right now. We are not producing well-trained engineers, architects, and what have you. So you're getting these problems. And it's going to continue unless we go back and invest properly, right, in education to ensure that what we are producing, the graduates that are coming out, are solid to stand the test of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mike Osoba, a social activist and nation builder, for talking with us extensively on the role of research and infrastructure development in Nigeria. Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that has been the show. But before we go, Femi, a lot has been said today regarding the role of research in different sectors in Nigeria. We've seen how key research is in Nigeria, but we know that as a people, we do not really have that culture of being proactive towards issues. And that's one thing that research will help us curb. How do we begin to imbibe or build a culture of proactively planning for things, whether it's in the health sector, is in infrastructure, is in agriculture, whatever sector?
Just like one of our guests said earlier, the issue of national orientation is quite important. In fact, everything starts and ends with leadership. Everything starts with government and ends with government. For issues like this to be of a national development, there's a need for government to come up with a policy. And so it will start with the national orientation, where an average Nigerian understands the importance of data, the need for it, and how it's going to be utilized. Then apart from that, the framework to fund research has to be spelled out, has to become a norm, whereby the way we are funding our budget every year, a particular amount of money is also devoted to funding of research and development. So like I said, if this is done on the national scale from the federal level, it will be extended to state level, and before you know it becomes a culture, because at the local level it will be generally embraced, and anything done at the federal is being followed by the right policy, supervision, and the right framework. Trust me, it's a matter of time. Nigerians will embrace it as a policy.
Yes, and I also think that the education sector has a lot to play when students in tertiary levels do projects or research for the end of study. So project work, sometimes it's just like a random peak. We need to be intentional about these things. Even these days, primary schools are beginning to engage in projects, even secondary school projects, but it has to be intentional, tailored to, or it has to be about issues that we're battling with. And then you talked about utilization. Yes, there are several research that has been done, but because they've not been integrated into national plan, it seems like no work has been done. So I think, yes, it starts and ends with government. Government will be the one to lay the framework for how research starts and how it also ends. That way, we can be a better society, being proactive, because it's only the man who has seen tomorrow knows very well how to plan for tomorrow. And research is a lens through which we can see tomorrow. That is how we wrap the show today. Thank you very much for watching. I am Blessing AG. An update, you need to know that Business Insight comes up at 10 a.m. Do not miss it. The show, Early Exchange, continues tomorrow, 7 a.m. West African time. Femi.
And don't forget, the conversation continues on our social media platform, our YouTube platform. You can share your thoughts in respect to the subject that we've discussed today. The conversation continues. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.
Insightful show, don't you agree? I'm sure you do. When we support research and development, we'll create a more innovative and prosperous future for us all. I'll see you again tomorrow. I am Blessing AG.